Well, it is 6 o'clock. I normally say Monday evening, and but the truth is today it is Tuesday evening, 6 o'clock. As you know, we were supposed to have this conversation um, yesterday at 6 o'clock on Monday, like every other real dialogue conversation that we have had. And but there was going to be an exception yesterday. And but as they say, all things work together for good, because we had to really we at the last moment had to change the day and then and postpone to today, which happens to be a special day and our guest's birthday. We're going to touch about that. So this is the Real Dialogue. As you know, the Real Dialogue is an initiative of the Real Village. I've said it before and almost on every conversation, but let me say it again. The dual purpose of the Real Dialogue, number one, is to capture and celebrate, number two, the continent's change makers. Here, we don't just celebrate people that are on top of what they do, that are good at what they do, that are successful at what they do, but we celebrate people that realize that that success is not an end in and of itself, but it is means to the end, and the end is the service of humanity, of humankind, especially those that are often overlooked. And service. So we celebrate more than success. We celebrate significance. We celebrate significant success that has a practical importance and benefit, not just for the one that is that has achieved it personally, but for others around him as well. And today is no exception. We are celebrating another continent's change maker, and he's just going to join us now. I say a couple of people are already joining us, and his name is Dr. Jongimpi Papu. Papu, Dr. Jongimpi Papu. Good afternoon and good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for having me in your famous show.
Famous show. I think you will make it famous. I understand that I haven't done this, but let me do it. Today is your birthday. Now let me do this. I'm gonna put these and pretend like I'm Stevie Wonder and sing for you. I sang for you this morning, but I'm gonna do it again. And happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Okay, the Stevie Wonder act is out now, but it's your birthday today for you. And happy birthday to you. What was that?
It's coming to an end.
I know.
Yeah,
well, happy
birthdays also give you an opportunity to reflect on the meaning of your life. It's sometimes the concept more than the concept of the fact that you were born. And it just comes to mind, and you ask yourself if I'm really living up to the purpose of the one who brought me here. So that's an ongoing question.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's quite scary. It's quite scary. But yeah, it's been my day.
Well, I hope that you've taken the time to rest though, and away from the daily grind and work.
Well, if I was resting, I wouldn't be here. But
I was gonna say that. Well, thank you that you are here once again for this, Dr. Papu. Happy birthday to you, and we bless this day, and we are so grateful for this day, because in it you were born, and because you are here, and I mean this, you know that I do. This world is a better place, and we're gonna talk about that. And you are here. It means it must have started somewhere. I understand a Google to Cape Town, and talk to me for this about where were you born, your childhood, any memories that come to mind?
I grew up in Google to Cape Town in the early 60s. I was born in 1961. So I was right there, in and out, of course. I've always said that, well, some may argue against that Cape Town, when it comes to apartheid, I think it was more pronounced in Cape Town than elsewhere. If you went to Transkei, and Ciskei then, and Joburg, I'm just mentioning the big regions. I've been to those even during the time of apartheid, but Cape Town was different. The parliament was there, just at the foot of parliament where the whole thing was cooked, but it looks like it was this. First of all, the pilot project was us in Cape Town for many reasons. Maybe Cape Town and KwaZulu-Natal, I don't know. In Joburg, when I left and I went to Joburg 20 years later, I found a very developed area with filling stations in the location, with supermarkets in the location, in the township. But in Cape Town, a filling station, we had one supermarket that came very late also. Otherwise, we had these municipal shops, and that was it. So, and even now you can tell when you go to Cape Town, most of the progressive Black people that are in Cape Town are basically either coming from Eastern Cape or from Joburg. Those coming from Cape Town, we still a struggle. We had no colleges there. We had, at one stage, only had 2 high schools. So that's where I grew up. So I'm trying to give you all the excuses I can make for all the mistakes I've made, but that's where I grew up in Cape Town.
and then of course you also studied there as well. Ekugulethu in Cape Town as well. You studied in Cape Town as well. And,
I studied in Cape Town. Yes, I did
your high school.
The way I did sub A and sub B in Cape Town, and I didn't fail sub A, but I forgot to write the exams because of my hectic schedule then. So I forgot that they were writing exams. They forgot to tell me also. So when I came there, they were closing school and they were issuing reports. So I didn't fail sub A, but like I said, I didn't write the exams. But I went to sub B, and then from there, my parents felt that maybe I'll be missing a lot of exams. So I went and spent the next 4 years in the Eastern Cape, a place called Matatiele, very fun, very cold. And that brought me to my senses. That's where I was somehow developed, because it was actually more wonderful at school than at home. So you felt like you wanted to go to school, run away from
school. Sure. And what was the name of your high school? Because you went back and did your high school in Cape Town. I know that for sure.
Idimkize.
Idimkize.
Yeah, Idimkize was my high school. And primary, I was at Siviwe. Siviwe. And my lower primary, I can't remember my lower primary. Really, my life was hectic. It must have been elite. We were platooning. My school was platooning at another school. We started at 12 or 1 o'clock. So it was there where it all happened.
And what kind of a lad was Jongimpi. And one of the first things I remember, the first time I went with you to your township, Ekugulethu, the first person that saw you were like, "Hey, Chikicha," and then of course I later learned that was also used because of your love for soccer, and that was your soccer nickname. And talk to me about growing up Ekugulethu and your involvement as a child.
Of course, every young Black boy growing up at that time wanted to be a soccer player. Remember, the people who were there in the limelight were players, Ace Tsulengo, Jomo Sono, and others. There were very few medical doctors or whatever. You had teachers and then had soccer players. So those are our role model. So every young boy then dreamed that one day we will be soccer players, will be professionals, will play soccer. Because that was what was in the newspapers then. We had no TV, in the radio. So we grew up trying to hone on the skill of playing soccer because it looked like I mean, there were so many blacks who were playing soccer. You felt like you should also be part of that. So we thought we'd be playing soccer. All of us, our dream was to play soccer. So not that I was very good, but we played soccer so that
actually, it turns out that you were quite good. You were quite good at it. My sources tell me. I was not there, of course. I was older.
Yeah, well, I was there. I was there. But I've got to mention something before I forget.
Sure.
And now that I'm here, I'm thinking hard on that. I'll have to do something. There were two guys who played a very important role in my life. During my first 2 years at school, I just mentioned jokingly that I didn't write sub A.
Sub A.
Yeah. But when I did sub B, and had it not been for those guys, I don't think I would have been here. For some reason, Uvuyani and Oktobani, they were staying not far from home. We were not friends, but for some reason, they took upon themselves to make sure that when they go to school, they will pass by me and make sure we all go to school. We were not friends, and they did that every day. So I would go there just not to disappoint them. And ended up enjoying going to school. I mean, each time I think about that, it just touches my heart. These guys came out of nowhere. And remember, we were young, and they made it their point that when they go to school, because I would be playing the whole morning and I'll forget to go to school because we had to go to school at 1 o'clock. Imagine. I wake up, my parents are gone, they're at work, my mother's at work, my father wasn't staying with us at that time. And so there's no one. And they said, please remember at 1 o'clock you have to go to school. So you'll be playing with your friends the whole morning and you have to remember at 1 to go to school. You can't.
Sure.
So but these guys would come and pick me up and I'll quickly wash, and then every day they would do that. Every day. The first time I wrote exams was in June. It was my first time to write an exam when I was doing sub A. I promise you when I say I don't even know who my teacher was in sub A. Even the name of my teacher. I've seen people saying my teacher was so and so. I don't know my teachers. I don't know the classmates except those two. I don't know who was in my class. I don't even know what we were taught in sub A and sub B. I don't know anyone except two guys that used to come for me. I don't know my teacher. I don't even know what the name of my teacher was. It's scary. It's like it's blank. When you go as far as A, B, it's just blank. I start to see faces from standard 1. A and B, it's blank. It's scary. Maybe I need to go to a psychologist and help me bring that memory. So I can't remember anyone. It was like I was the only one in class with those two guys. So I wrote my first June whatever test, or the whatever test that I wrote. So 7 days late then. And I remember my teacher writing, no. I remember when the reports, for the first time I had a report, I was number 53 in a class of 57, I think. And I felt like it was big. I celebrated the whole holidays. I mean, just to be able to say passed, that was something. And the two guys who used to pick me up were both below 5. Either one was 2, number 2, and other was number 3. That didn't bother me. It really didn't make a difference. To me, number 2 and number 53 didn't make a difference. What mattered was I passed. It was my first time to see passed on my report. So number 2 and number 3, it's just like this one is number 3 to pass. This one is number 53 to pass. So it's like one and the same thing. So that to me was the shape, if I could say, of my life in a way. And then later on, when I went to Matatiele, there were other experiences that shaped me even further.
I do know for sure. That growing up, the path that you have taken of becoming a minister of the gospel was not. It's not something you grew up planning to do. Actually, it was a 11th hour decision. From what I remember from some of our conversations. what were you planning? If it was not going to be, pastoral ministry, and of course we're going to speak about how did that, happen. But what were you planning? What was the goal? What would you have wanted to be?
I wanted to, when we were doing our matric, my friends, when we were doing matric at IDM, I think some of my friends were going to go for engineering, but I wanted to be a medical doctor. So there was a strike in 1980. We couldn't write our exams, and the strike was quite early in the year, so we were not going to classes. So we had to go to Sea Point High, Boys High, and there were white boys who were doing also matric and helping us with maths and physics with a fully furnished lab. It was my first time to see what I used to see in my textbook. I saw those. I said, oh, this thing is like this. I mean, those guys were doing experiments, and I was asking myself, so I'm going to be with this guy at university next year, and he's teaching me. He's teaching me. I felt very inadequate. He's teaching me. He's also going to do medicine. I'm going to do medicine as well, but he's teaching me, and he's going to be my classmate. It just shows how far we were in terms of the quality of education that we had. Remember, we were the class that did Afrikaans, maths in Afrikaans when I was doing at 6. Wiskunde, adreskunde, landbouwkunde, also agriculture, maths, Wiskunde, and geography. I think it was adreskunde, something like that. So we studied in Afrikaans. So. And it was quite a challenge. So I wanted to be a medical doctor, seriously. So I would go to the hospital just to smell, just to get the smell. There's a very unique smell in the hospital there, and they just put that thing in. I'd interviewed doctors also in hospital. There was a program, as Career Research Information Center. We were there, so I'd gone to interview doctors. So actually, my grandmother, as early as when I was 9, 10 years, used to call me Dr. Jongi. There was a story in the now it was radio Bantu then. A story of a guy who was known as Dr. Jongi. I can't remember the story, but the main actor was Dr. Jongi. And so my mother, when she was happy grandmother, would call me Dr. Jongi. So I grew up as far as standard 4, knowing that I was going to be Dr. Jongi. And that, by the way, helped me to be disciplined, because I knew that if I wanted to be Dr. Jongi, I cannot not go to school. I've got to go to school. Dr. Jongi must go to school. So that dream kept me going for the next, 6 years, 7 years, that I'm going to be Dr. Jongi. And it stayed with me, even though at one stage there was also soccer, but as a secondary career. But Dr. Jongi actually was it. I was going to be a medical doctor. Up until December, when we couldn't write the exams, so I was supposed to be, I'd applied hoping to go to UCT or nearby, but it was still a struggle even to enter those universities. But I thought I would make it. And I went to a camp. I came back from a youth camp. I wanted to be a pastor. Now that was an anticlimax even for me. I felt like somebody has bewitched me. It took me time to let go of that dream. I even thought once I finish ministry, I'll still be a doctor. Actually, for some time in my ministry, I felt like maybe I'm supposed to be a medical missionary. But that dream, as I grew, faded off, and here I am today. Oh, by the way, it took me quite some time to realize that maybe this is where I'm supposed to be. Mine was not those miraculous ones. I was doubting right through up until 5, 6 years into ministry whether this is where I needed to be.
Look. I know I'm jumping the gun now, but because you've mentioned it, and we cannot let it go, because I know many young ministers in particular at some stage reach that place in their lives that maybe others are called, maybe I'm not, I should not be here. But talk to me about what is it that happened, if there was a specific event or a culmination of events that made you realize, you know what, this is where I should be.
Listen, it was for me quite embarrassing to be. Remember, I wasn't even a serious Christian. And for me to being a semi-Christian and want to be a pastor, it was a shock even at home. My parents had to really get to really warm up to the idea. My friends, those who got to hear, hey, we hear that Rev. It was embarrassing. I mean,
I know.
very embarrassing, very, very embarrassing. Even going to church was itself an embarrassing moment. Every day when I had to go to church, I had to struggle and hide my Bible, and yet I'm going to be a pastor. And so what helped me was to go to Joburg. My uncle was in Joburg, so I had to go to Joburg to finish my studies. Immediately when I got there, nobody took me seriously in Cape Town when I said I want to be a pastor. I didn't take myself seriously as well, so it's not a big deal. But when I went to Joburg and they got to hear that, all of a sudden they called me Mfundis. So they sort of pushed me and nudged me so that I couldn't turn back. Had I remained in Cape Town, I promise you, I would have dropped that idea as fast as possible. But in the camp, when I stood up for an appeal that was made for one to dedicate his life to Christ, I stood up at the time, as indicating that I want to be baptized, but at the same time, I wanted to be a pastor, both at the same time. So that was too much for me. First of all, to be a Christian, that was something else. And then also to be a pastor. I didn't even know what it means to be a pastor, but I felt like I wanted to be a pastor. A young pastor was preaching in that camp, and one of the reasons why I was taken up and I wanted really to be part of, Pastor Mbaza, you'd know him. He was preaching at the camp. I can't remember what he preached, but I could sense the confidence and the youthfulness. It was my first time to see a young pastor. So probably I felt like, it looks like I can be a pastor. I think he made the whole thing of being a pastor very attractive. And so he also indirectly played a very important role. And there were other things that happened in the camp also that made me think that this thing of Christianity does make sense, because I really struggled with the whole concept of faith. It couldn't make sense. I would go to church and want to listen, and nothing made sense. People were excited, but nothing made sense. But when I went to that camp, there was some light that it looks like there is something here that is one to reflect on. And probably I wanted to explore that. That's why I wanted to be a pastor. I really wanted to explore that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, we will touch this. One of the things that have defined your ministry is your deliberate attempt over the years consistently to merge the mind, the heart, and faith, where it's as if you decided that, you know what, I want to make this faith thing make sense and be as intelligent and as appealing, especially to young people. We will touch on that. I know one of the things that you would say, okay, let me not jump ahead of myself, because there is a story in your, that you used that you've shared with me. I thought it was very funny. At school, I think it was high school or something. Either you would be late or you would not go to school, and then the teacher would be like testing you guys or revising, and you would be standing against the wall, and for some reason you would have the answers to those questions, which of course it does speak to the intelligent student that you were, and even those that know back then. But that's not the whole point. But do you remember that story? And so it got to a point where he did not allow you to answer the questions anymore.
Yeah, I know the story. We were supposed to come for morning classes every day. Sure. And so a chapter will be done in that morning classes. The teacher will do a chapter. I can't remember what the subject was, but he will do a chapter. So he wasn't going to be bothered that you didn't come, but he will just ask you the questions on the chapter.
Sure.
So you didn't come, so you probably know the chapter. So what I would do before I sleep, I would read the chapter that was going to be discussed the following day. So when I came just before they closed the morning classes, so we're all there late. Then he says, you guys were late, so you know what the chapter is. So let's go. So we'll all be standing there. Nobody would know. So you'll be beaten like two lectures, and then you don't know, then you ask another question. By the time he's done, you would have received more than 20 based on the number of questions you could answer, and no one could answer any questions. But I was in the middle. So you'd ask the questions. I could see from the board, the answer is there because I remember reading. So it was not that I was so intelligent, but I could remember because I read. So yeah, the answers. But if you don't know, you won't know that these are the answers. So you would ask, then come to me, then I would answer. So all those after me would not be beaten because he'll have to start from there. And then he starts again, he comes to me, I'll answer. So those are not beaten. Then he goes back. And then he discovered, no, these guys are not going to be beaten because I'm in the middle. So he said, so when he came to me, he says, shut up, shut up. And then he was almost very angry. He said, shut up, shut up. Shut up. And then he asked the other learners that were on the other side. And then of course they wouldn't know. Not that they were not intelligent, that's that they didn't go through the chapter as I did. Then he'll come back to me hoping that I won't be able. Then I will answer. Now I did not attend the class and I was not beaten. So he looked at me, he doesn't know what to do. He says, come here, give me your hand. He just gave me some. But there was nothing he could do. I quickly learned that I needed to take my school very seriously, especially when I went to Matatiele, and with the idea that I wanted to be Dr. Jongi, and also because I was afraid of being beaten. My pain threshold was very low. I would literally think that I was going to die. I saw people they would just stretch their hand and take 3 lectures. For me, just like that. For me, it was like my bones are going to be broken. I'm going to bleed. My heart is going to stop. It was so painful. So I tried to make sure that I never get beaten. If it's recitation, I must know it by heart. If it's maths, I must know. If it is whatever, I had to be top because I was running away from pain, and I had to literally avoid being beaten, so that and that pushed me to take my book seriously.
Sure. And I should also mention that you come from a home. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 siblings.
4, yeah.
Yes, 4 siblings, and all of them are still alive.
All of them are alive by God's grace. Yes.
Yeah, all of them are still alive, and you've also you of course you married, and you've got 2 boys, young adults now, Sihle and Mulumko, and amongst other things that I know about them is that they are artistically gifted, they are musically gifted, but a lot of people attribute that exclusively to their mother, who we all know that she sings, and but you're also not bad musically. In fact, I understand that you even used to lead organ and piano at church at Bethel.
Yeah, this will come as a surprise to some. I can play organ. Actually, I was an organist at Bethel. I was an organist. I mean, like elected. I mean, like an organist. You know, the organist, when you say we're going to sing this hymn, I just played. But now I'm sure I would struggle. Well, I'm not talented, but you could tell that he's playing this song. I played the notes. I could do sight reading. And so some get surprised when they discover that. So my boys have taken after me, to be honest, because the mother cannot play any instrument. So I don't know what do they mean when they say they took after the mother.
And then of course the rest of your life, and then you studied at Bethel, right? The first 2 years of your
Bethel, I did my training at Bethel, training at Bethel.
Yeah. You went into the field, and then you went to Oakwood College, then university.
I went to Oakwood College in Alabama, USA. Yes.
Yeah. And then you came back to study.
And then I came back. Yeah.
Look, we have got to talk about because there were. It was quite a few of. I mean, you were one of those few students that got to go physically to Oakwood. What has that meant for your ministerial training? What did that experience mean?
Okay, for me, on several levels. One, on the exposure to Adventism internationally. We grew up in South Africa. You only know Adventists from that angle, and then going overseas, it was, especially at Oakwood,
Sure.
as far as the church is concerned. But on another level, being Black also in a Black institution, well run, with professors everywhere, teachers, doctors, and this whole culture of excellence at Oakwood, this whole pride of their history. And when it was Martin Luther month, February, you would see that, the school goes all out. It sort of awakened in me the consciousness that I am Black and I'm an African. It moving away from Africa to, I would say Africa now, South Africa, moving away from Africa to Alabama actually made me aware of my African root. Sometimes you have to come out of that environment in order to understand it.
Sure.
And to be proud of who I am. So Oakwood sort of helped me to embrace myself in many ways than one, in many, many ways than one. Of course, Oakwood had its own challenges. Black Americans then had their own challenges when it comes to Africans, because they thought that we are also a little bit inferior and with not enough knowledge on certain issues, and one had to struggle with that as well. I remember we did a program there, and they were saying, "Why did you come to US?" It's like US is Canaan. I said, "I didn't come to US. I came to Oakwood. If Oakwood was in Russia, I would have gone there. So ask me why I came to Oakwood. I don't know anything about US. I know Oakwood. I've got nothing to tell about US. Oakwood happens to be in US. That's, to me, is accidental. So I had to make that, and some people didn't like that. I remember some saying, "Do you have a problem with the US?" But being in US in itself, US wasn't a blessing, because then they made you feel like a foreigner. You grew up in Africa where you struggled, but at least you were at home. And then US really shows that you are a foreigner. And when people we cross the street and you make a mistake, and they say, "Hey, you, whatever," then you remember again, "Oh, by the way, I don't belong here." So those, so in the negative sense, my Africanity, if you please, and being Black was to a certain extent brought to light, so that I was conscious of that. And Oakwood. So Oakwood, it was not so much the classes I attended at Oakwood, but the environment. That to me was very uplifting, just being in that environment. I've taken my boys there 20 years later, because I felt that as an alumnus of that great institution, I needed to pay my homage and go there. And I took them and said, "This is where it all happened." And so, yes, that lies very at the heart of my development, Oakwood.
I love the words that you used. We've always referred to it as the mecca of Black Adventist excellence, and words that have come to also define your ministry over the years. But before I get there, you have got to share. I know that one of your enjoyed experiences was in classes with was it Cleveland or Bradford, where he would tell you, apparently his strategy was, "Guys, this is what we're going to be studying, and this is where I'm going to be testing you. So let's close that. This is how you know. Now let's talk about life." Talk to me about that class, because that class seems to have left an indelible mark in your experience of Oakwood.
Yeah, the class was called Christian Dynamics. Like I say, those are the classes that really formed one. Some would know Cleveland is late now, Dr. Cleveland. very, very erudite, dynamic, progressive thinker. He literally forced us, only say forced me, to really think and reflect. It's one of the things that I pray to God that as pastors would try and do that. I may not be good at that, but that's something that I treasure, like to do. And so being in his class for me helped me to see a lot and appreciate the Bible. So his class, he would, American education, he would say, guys, this class is the reason why you came to Oakwood. And so we're going to study, but because you are worried about the exams and everything, let me tell you what's going to be the exam. Write the questions, write the answers. Now you know the answers, you know the questions. Just memorize the answers and get to know the questions. And then you get your A, and then forget now. Listen to me. Let's talk now. Don't worry about the exams. That class was full. And then he would go home, and he would literally go. And it was an experience to be in that class. I mean, it was like worship. Every class was like worship. I mean, all these issues about being African, about the Bible and Africanity, of being African and Black. I mean, we dealt with those as early as then in the 90s, because I was there in the 90s. And whole idea of Black theology later on to come also, and the theology, African theology, and all of that. So the root was actually, the seed was planted in such classes. There were other classes that I can't even remember, but I just had to do them for a grade. But a few that I can remember, yeah.
You are one of those transitional pastors in Seventh-day Adventism in Southern Africa, between that great generation, and then would be your generation, and then would be maybe those that came before us, and then us. Now there are three. I just need to mention this. There are three in American Black Adventism. They have Bradford, they've got Brooks and Cleveland. I've always felt that in South African Adventism, at least in the Xhosa Church, the Black Xhosa Church, the three for those would be Bandla, Fosi, and Pekana. That you cannot talk about the church in South Africa, and in particular in the Xhosa, not just limited to the Xhosa speaking church, without mentioning those three individuals. And I understand that you've had the opportunity of working personally with all three. And do you want to go through that?
Yeah, Pastor Pekana was my first mentor, my mentor assigned to groom me. So he actually exemplified to me what a pastor is supposed to be. And what he did for me was to show, those who know him, he was a walking Bible.
Sure.
So he took his Bible very seriously, and he would preach, never opened his Bible with his Bible. I tried that. I'm not very good at that, but he would literally, that came out. I mean, I've slept with Pastor Pekan in the same room, and admired him at a very close range. Men who seldom eat, and sometimes you wonder, when are you going to eat? But very committed. Those were more like the pioneers in a way, second, third wave pioneers, who worked very hard. And then so I've got that part, this idea of being ready to preach at any point, at any given point. You are a pastor. I mean, we'd go to a care meeting with Pastor Pekana. He's the district director. We just know the dates. We don't have the program. We don't know who the speakers are.
There's no schedule.
We rock up there, all the pastors of the district, Mabinza, myself, and others. We rock up there, and we're eating breakfast in the morning. And just before we leave, so, by the way, before you leave, Jongimpi, you're going to be the main speaker in the youth, and then you're going to be having a lesson in the adults, for the adults in the afternoon, and then you'll do farewell service with the, and then when he's talking, you're writing the times. And then thinking, what am I going to say? Because and then you say, as we leave from here, we're going for the morning manna. You'll be the one preaching, and
Sure.
immediately, I mean, things start happening in your stomach because, man, I came here to eat. Now all of a sudden I've come out. I have to preach now. So that was Pekana. He believed that you should know and be always ready. Then I worked with Forcy. Would spend lunch together, would drive from Tanzania to Cape Town. Those people were placed on my path to really develop me. Because the hours I spent with Forcy, I mean, driving in the car, I remember once, all the way to Cape Town, just the two of us. There would be times during lunch where he'd say, Brother Papu. So he was a leader. So his influence for me was, as far as leadership is concerned, he stood, a man of principle, and those who know him. And then it was Pastor Bandla. Pastor Bandla, I also was like a father to me, very close. He was in Cape Town when I was young. He left before I could know anything about him. But we met up in Joburg. It was like a family. I would go sleep there in his library, study books. We sat together, we listened. He was a thinker. So I had a thinker, a theologian of note, a reader. He read widely. Controversial speaker, I would say. Youth speaker, I mean, Stasa would call him now and again. So I had him as a thinker. I had Forcy. Forcy was a preacher as well, but I loved his leadership. Forcy as a leader, and Pekana as a Bible preacher. So that was the basis and the foundation of my ministry.
Sure. Thanks for that. I just needed us to touch on that. Look, in your work, you've spent your life working primarily in a lot of people. Of course, we know you. You seem to have been in leadership roles throughout your ministry, and but there was a time, and I think this is very important for us to touch on it, and then before we transition, when you were at a district, I think one of your first districts, I don't know, Yugi, and the experience was so discouraging that you were even contemplating to just let this thing go. And one of the pastors who incidentally later on would leave ministry, but actually encouraged you to stay while it was very hard. Talk to me about that experience, because we know you later on.
Yeah, I was giving up. I was just waiting for a moment, then I'll get in the bus and go. It was just not what I thought it would be. And out of the blue, Pastor Mabinza shows up.
Mabinza, yes.
And he was not stationed very far from me. We were actually sharing the border. He comes and he says, I've come to visit you. I knew him from college, but we're not very close. He said, I come to visit you. And they spent the whole week. Then after the week, I went and spent another week with him. And that was it. There was no turning back. So he came at the time when I was at my lowest. He enjoyed cooking. He says, what do you have? And then we'd go do some groceries. I mean, he would cook and then tell stories. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience. After that week, we went back. He didn't say much. He didn't say, I'll stay or whatever. There was a man who was enjoying himself. And I said, what's wrong with me? I should be enjoying myself. This guy is okay. Told me this, told me that. So we learned to work together, join projects together, visit each other. Now I knew I could, if I'm feeling down, I could just hop in the bus and I'll visit with him. And that, by the way, he left ministry in Mabinza, but he was still very active in the church. I buried him. I preached at his funeral. It touched my heart. It really one of those funerals where it touched my heart. And I felt like I never appreciated him for what he did. I don't know whether I told him, but I felt like I never really appreciated him for what he did. But I preached at his funeral, unfortunately, yes. And his wife also is late. He has a young boy who was at university at some point doing third year. I don't know where he is now. But yeah, that's the man that also was brought.
Speaking about preaching, and look, you have served the church in different roles, and youth ministry for many years. The word Papu has always been synonymous with young people and youth ministries, family ministries, ministerial, and currently serving the Cape Conference as its president. But the one thing that has always been consistent, and I mean, if I were to be asked your contribution, or I believe we are called to different parts of ministry. Would I be right if I say Dr. Jongimpi Papu is primarily a preacher?
Yeah, but not a preacher in the true sense of the word. There are people who are preachers. I mean, they're dynamic, they're powerful, they move mountains. I'm a preacher. I enjoy preaching in the moment, but I'm not one who would raise the hand and say, let me be the one preaching. I had a friend of mine, his name is Preacher Ngwenya. He enjoyed preaching. He would, at every moment, he would be there. I'm not that. I would run away from preaching. Preaching to me is such a very difficult thing to do.
Sure.
It takes so much of my time. I would literally be trembling because of the hours I need to spend preparing the sermon.
Sure.
I wish I could fast track the whole thing and be at the pulpit, because I enjoy myself when I'm at the pulpit, but the time it takes for me to get there, that's the painful part. The reading and the thinking and the reflecting and that to me is the part that makes me say I don't. Well, people would say, but we see you there preaching, we see you there preaching. Yeah, but you'll be surprised how many times I've said no to many others, and the few that you see, you think. I try to say no as much as I can. Preaching is to me a very, 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 very painful. Not preaching, preparing to preach.
Sure.
But once I get to the preaching and the thing is done, then really I enjoy myself.
Sure.
And I could pay you for that.
Sure.
But
sure.
If somebody could do the preparation for honestly, it is very tough. I've seen people just stand up and preach. Maybe they are talented. I don't have that talent. It is very, very difficult. It's even worse now. It's very difficult. Yeah, it is very difficult. But yes, I would love to be known as a preacher.
Now, how important is that? I personally think that is important. But how important is it for a minister of the gospel to find something that they really, out of the many things that they have to do, I mean, we've got to do all of these things, but how important it is to find that one thing and then make sure that while you do other things, because one of the things that I appreciate about you is, and I want to know if it was a deliberate decision on your part, in the many roles, even the current one that you are currently occupying of being the president of the Cape Conference, it seems as if you have decided that in whatever I do, I will not let go of this particular call of being a preacher. Was that a conscious, deliberate decision? That and when I preach, I am not the president. When I preach, I'm not the director. And when I preach, I am not, but I'm a preacher.
Yeah,
deliberate decision.
Yeah. I think preaching for me reminds us that we are all Christians.
Sure.
There's no leadership position in preaching. You don't stand there and preach and have access to the mind of God because you're the president or youth director. Preaching just says, this is where we are. I'm a preacher. Sure. And the moment it helps so that whatever, I mean, I worked at the division. Some would think but to me, what comes alive in my mind is when I'm behind the pulpit and when I'm just an ordinary preacher. A preacher from Bethel who had 2 years diploma. That's it. Just an ordinary preacher that seeks to explain the word. I worked at Helderberg as vice rector for student affairs, preaching and teaching, basically. But I'll come alive in the class as I interact with those minds.
Sure.
Chatting the boards and doing this and that. Yeah. But to me, what would make my day to know that I have a class at 11 where I'm
Sure.
going to be sharing some ideas. I like doing that, especially in a classroom setting.
Sure.
Teaching and preaching, those two, that's it for me. I'll pay you to do that.
Sure. Now, look, this is not a question, this is a statement. You are one of the most effective preachers that the Adventist Church in Africa has ever produced. And so it would not be good for me to continue with this conversation and not ask this, because a lot of people that are watching now are aspirant preachers. You said a lot that so much happens before you actually stand on the pulpit. Talk to us briefly what goes into the making of a great message and a great messenger.
One word, it's a burden. If you don't have a burden, if you don't have a burden, like I've got a message I want to get across. There's something here that preaching could be you could be very superficial in your preaching if you're doing it because you have a slot. Sometimes I would say yes to preaching because that's an opportunity to relieve myself of the burden I have. It's like I've got this burden. So preaching, God gives an opportunity. I've always said that God gives me a message and then he organizes people to give me an opportunity to share that message, something like that. So when you approach me and says, Pastor, can you preach to us? I said, okay, this is why God gave me this, so I can deliver it there. Of course, there have been moments where I would struggle to put a sermon together up until the last hour of the morning. You know those experiences. But it's a burden. It's that burden. Why are you preaching? If you're going to say the Lord is our rock, why? Why today? Why must we know that? Why must we know that the Lord is our rock? But why are you picking that up? And who are you trying to address? For most of my time, I used to address myself in the pulpit, in the pew. So I'll see myself sitting there and I'll try to address myself, my questions, my fears, my doubts. Because preaching and sermons are born out of your walk with God, your devotion. That's where God speaks to you. That's when you speak with God in your devotional life. Of course, you could go to the library and say, I'm going to go prepare someone. I want to think of a sermon. That's fine. But I think sermons are born in your struggle with God, in your walk with God, in those morning devotions, whatever evening, quiet time that you have. God speaks to you and directs a message to you, and it challenges you. It breaks your heart. It makes you cry. It makes you cry. Some preachers say, and the preacher's Bible, if you open it, you'll see some stains of tears. It makes you cry. You never preach a message that has not touched you, because it's not going to touch anyone. You sometimes the message is too big. In most cases, for you as a messenger, you feel like I can't contain this. It's too much what God is giving me. So you break it into pieces. You do this part, you do another part, then do another part. And then maybe after 10 times doing that, then the message comes together all in one. Some people think that I don't preach short sermons. I preach long sermons. I don't know. It's only when I finish preaching that I realize, my goodness, I've taken an hour. And I always feel better. And I said, next time I'm not going to take an hour. I'm not going to do that again. And it's wrong. I don't think people should take an hour. 20 minutes, 30, maybe it's fine. I don't know. But it's your walk with God, preaching, as Barry Black would say, out of the overflow. And having the idea that we could stay here and listen to him, and he would actually expound. It's just that he doesn't have enough time to do it.
So
I'm saying to preachers, don't make me feel that if we were to give you 10 more minutes, you'd run out of things to say. Don't end because you've run out of things to say. End because it's time to end. and let people know that he could still go on. He could still go on. There's so much.
Sure.
That's to me that then preaching is not strenuous.
Sure.
But when by the time you end, people are saying, "Oh, he needs to end. He's finished everything he wanted to say."
So there is a question here. Look, we will touch this question because this is very important. But maybe let me just quickly touch that before we leave, because this is the one thing that people don't know about you. Because we see you there, people don't know that you are actually an introvert, and that you are actually relatively very shy, and you blossom shows that. Please ask the dog how he balances his personality as an introvert with the public nature of his calling.
But people don't believe that when I say that. At home, my father, who's late now, he would say to me when we have a meeting with everyone, he would say to me, "My son, Jongimpi, feel free to talk. Feel free to talk." I would go to meetings. I'll be the last one to talk in a meeting. I'll have an idea, but just to share it just takes too much. I'm very, very shy. I'm an introvert, if you please. Sure. I have to speak. Some people have given me names that I'm proud, I'm this, I'm that. I don't blame them. I don't get excited. Hey, huggy, and then hello. I mean, it's like, yeah, what's it? I mean, that's it. I'm fine. Good. Bye. You know, I could sit next to a person all the way for 10 hours. I'm fine, not opening my mouth. But here's a problem. Once I open my mouth and I get to enjoy what I'm talking, then I can't stop.
I know.
Then I can't stop. But yeah, I don't know that I do not preach because I happen to be an extrovert. No, for me, it's the other way around. And I don't know. Maybe it's not the right combination, but yeah, I've had to struggle with that. That's one of the reasons why I would never volunteer myself to preach. I would never do that. It would be a struggle for me to do that.
Sure. Let me just quickly go through a couple of comments before we transition from Nolundi Kwenana. Dr. Papu and Dr. Mngabisa are the most animated lecturers I've ever come across. He's had the blessing of being taught by both. Somebody just sermons are born in your work. Okay. And then you cannot press a message. Okay, that's Bonge Mbonge. And Takata says, I've been blessed every time I listen to Papa's sermon. Ndisenesazela zizinto I vow to do, but andikazenzi itshala likum. Somebody does not believe that you are shy, and somebody's asking, is it wrong to cry when preaching? And then Lungela Nekile, uyavakala umfundisi, when he preaches that all his sermons come from a place of love. I fully understand what he means when he says his sermons are driven by umthwalo. So those are some of the comments. But there is a question there: is it wrong to cry when preaching?
Yeah, not when it's choreographed. It's wrong.
I actually heard of a PE preacher. Somebody apparently saw their notes and they written the cry here. So they have actually planned it that way.
Yeah. For me, it's not necessarily to cry tears, but I think your audience must be able to read in your facial expression some connection with your emotions, that this is not just coming from the head. There have been few instances where I shed tears behind the pulpit. It's quite awkward. But we are human beings, honestly. And I would say to young preachers, those moments come, and that's you become vulnerable. Yes, it's not wrong to cry. You can't say, but I should never cry, because once you say that, all you are saying is, then you are acting. You're pretending. So try not to. Sometimes the situation, I mean, you've been at funerals where you feel like this is just it's touching me. It's painful. and the audience respect that, and they understand.
Sure.
Honestly.
Fundis, do you see your character in any of your children? Any difficulties getting through them? Thandokazi Sandlana.
You know what? My youngest boy, I've got two boys. I don't want to talk about them because they're adults. Sometimes I look at one of them, at my boys, let me not mention which one, and I wish if at that age I were as organized as he is, I'd be very far. I see the discipline, I see the way the person is organized, and I say, no, he cannot be my son. I need to go do blood test. But I've seen them. I don't know what's the issue with this age. Not only my boys, I've realized that the young people are more matured in some ways in terms of broadness of mind than some of us were at their age. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but they seem to grasp certain things. Maybe it's because of information explosion and things like that. Remember, when we were doing assignments, you had to go to the library and read books. There was no Google, there was nothing. You had to literally search each book and the page and read. And just to get the sources, your bibliography, it was a struggle just to get your bibliography on a given topic. You have to literally go through your whole library. It will take you hours and hours and hours. So to get information, you have to work very hard. So the discipline would come in there. But yes, no, my children are, I think, more blessed than I am. And I think they have a brighter future than the one that I had.
What do you have?
But I always say to them, "You're lucky you have me as your father."
Sure.
Yeah, no, I haven't really had a hectic time with them. I promise.
A message from Pastor Nhlapo, Clifford Nhlapo, a very articulate, eloquent, and profound preacher. That's and I thought this is beautiful. I'm enjoying this chat as always. Mfu is giving us a gift. Got a birthday yak. That's beautiful. I thought that. All right, let's transition, my friend. Africa. Ooh. This is the whole point of this platform. This is the whole point of this platform. The mission of the Real Village is to reconstruct and empower Africa with love. And just before we get to Africa, this month is a special. We call it Biko month. I would like your reflections. When you think about the word Bantu, Steve Biko, what comes to mind? And has he impacted, or his writings impacted your life? And what do you think, or you wish we would not miss about Biko, that sometimes you feel we may be missing as this generation?
The obvious, of course, is the whole idea of Black consciousness. But what I loved about Biko, which I wish even those who are his ardent followers, is the ability to get your point across in a way that makes you listen and not want and not run and not be resistant. In other words, you say something which is painful, but you say it in such a way that the other person is able to hear it. I think it's amazing. For me, that's a take. There is nothing as difficult as speaking your pain, especially if you speak your pain to somebody who may be related to it, and you get angry. What I see today is some of our guys is anger. There's a lot of anger to a point where people who are listening fail to get the point. They fail to get it. What is it? Yes, I see he's hurting, he's angry, but what is he getting across? What you got from Biko was the ability to restrain himself and get the message across, so that even those who were his enemies could say, yeah. That makes sense. And I don't know how we can get there. It is something that is worth emulating, I promise you. So I always say to some guys, probably we're missing it right there. we have something we want to sell, but we are so angry that we just throw it at people.
Yeah.
We just throw it at people, and it can be, it's thrown at, and then they don't see the value, and by the time it gets to them, it's broken into pieces. But Steve Biko had a way of packaging his message, very profound. So even later on, you could still quote, because in our anger, we're so angry, it's difficult to remember what we said. We just remember that there was anger, but
Sure.
we struggle to remember what was said. I mean, I've watched him, I've listened to him, his voice, I've read his books. That to me is something besides all the others that we are aware of. But that to me is something that stands out.
Sure. Look, but and why do you think is that? I mean, that's quite an apt observation and a keen observation. Why do you think is that? Could it be? I mean, do you also have a sense that when Biko speaks, he doesn't necessarily speak as a victim, but he speaks like somebody who has somehow transcended the pain, but he's still aware because he's gone through it, and also realizes that people are still going through it. But he himself, when he is involved, he doesn't speak as a victim, so to speak. I mean, how do you think Biko got there to a point where he can calmly speak what he wants to speak without anger clouding his judgment, without anger making it impossible to come across as clearly as he could?
I think you've got it spot on. He managed to do what some of us would struggle with. Just because you are saying something which is right, you may think that you have earned the right to say it. I must confess, I'm not a very, very ardent follower to a point where I've read so many of his books. But from the little that I have come across, he, to me, appears to have been able, if you're going to lead people away from slavery, you've got to be able to lead them to where you have been, to where you are. I mean, you know the Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth was a slave. She broke away. She came back to take them to freedom that she had tasted. Sometimes we struggle all together, hoping that it's going to be better out there. But when you have been there, even if you are there in your mind, you have been there, you are able to be patient and to bring others also to where you are. I'll probably come back to this later on. The ability to go beyond your pain and channel your pain as a therapy to others who are going through that pain. It's amazing.
Sure.
It is amazing. It makes even your enemy to listen to you. He was not afraid. Some of the anger comes from fear. We are afraid, so we have to make noise so that this person cannot do what he did. So he makes so much noise so that he can be afraid of you. But I mean, even the way he died, even the way he died, physical, I'm not talking about emotional fear. The way he died, it just shows that this guy was not afraid. Sure. He literally wasn't afraid. One of the reasons why when you are beaten and tortured, you'd spill out all the things, is because you are afraid. You are afraid. Then you turn out to sell out, you are afraid. But if you listen to the way he died, it's very clear that here was a man who was not afraid. I mean, honestly, he was not afraid. And even physically, for that matter, not because he was a fighter or whatever, he had a karate, but it comes to a point, says, listen, this is who I am, and there's some of the things that I'm not going to take. And that to me characterized his life. Of course, I know some of those who follow him might say, I don't know, maybe I missed the point, but that's what comes out in my mind. There's a text in the Bible that says, don't envy the oppressor. Sometimes we're angry because we wish we could be where the oppressor is, drive his car, have his house, his swimming pool, And so you fight in the struggle so that you can have the house and the pool. By the moment we get liberation, we get into the very houses that the oppressors had, whoever the oppressors were in your case. But we could be fighting because we are envious. We could be angry because we are envious. But you get this idea from, I think what we need is genuine people who love Africans, genuinely, not just the likes. I think the Twitter and Facebook has made things worse because you stand there and then the followership, and then you have to say things they want to hear. But when you know that he had no crowds that we have now, that we can summon, he has them now in his death, but not when he was alive. That as you speak, there are thousands and thousands listening to what you're saying, and that tended to make him to be more genuine. And I think we need that, being more honest and be more vulnerable, and allowed him to think very creatively as well. He was a trailblazer in many ways.
Sure. All right. Now let's come back to that question. Your African dream. How does it look like? Number one. Number two.
Yes, go ahead.
Number two. Are we? Of course, it's a dream because we are not there yet. And what do you think, in your opinion, stands between us and realizing that African dream?
You've got to remind me of the second question. Let me try, and I'll just give you a snippet so we can keep this going. It doesn't become a presentation.
Sure.
When I left South Africa and went to Oakwood, it became very clear to me that I'm an African. Sure. It is when what makes you an African is that which makes you a stranger when you're out of Africa, and then you realize I'm an African. I'm an African.
Sure.
Now I'm a stranger. Then we have to really deal with the fact that I have to defend being African, and then people are asking all kinds of questions, especially of Black Americans at that time. In fact, at the time, because Huntsville, it's predominantly a lot of blacks there, where you have to defend. And my dream is when you read about the history of Africa and you see how innovative, the whole issue of civilization. I think sometimes we sell ourselves short. Before there was Britain and London, the illiterate, they used to call them barbarians. That's an English term for those tribes that Romans would call them barbarians, including your British. Before there was anything called that, they were writing, they were building, pyramids, they were writing, they were studying stars. And I'm saying, what happened to that? What happened to that? I read in the Bible, I hear so much mention of Egypt, of Kush, of Ethiopia. You don't hear much about a lot of Asia and Britain and America in the Bible.
Sure.
Already there was that connection. Look, when the Israelites were running away from Pharaoh, those guys had chariots. They had invented the wheel. The wheel was there. Now we're talking like thousands of years ago. They were riding chariots, man. The armies from Egypt were formidable. Those were powerful armies. That's why Israel would go to Egypt for help. Those armies were terrible, man. And I'm saying, for those of us who are always crying that we were colonized, they came and they defeated us. I said, somewhere we lost it. That would fight a person carrying a gun with a spear. Somewhere something happened. I don't know. There's a lacuna, there's a gap between that development. Of course, I'm not saying it was totally lost, but I'm saying we did not keep up with that progress. And there are theories that suggest that. Somebody says the big Sahara Desert, it's huge. And the moment you had groups crossing over, it sort of barricaded you. You were so cut off from the rest of the continent the northern part of Africa, including Europe and others, because there was a lot of interaction between those in those areas, a serious interaction. But with Sahara, that's why now we always say Africa sub-Saharan, always talk about sub-Saharan. And the moment you move beyond Sahara, it looks like we lost a lot of our civilization, died in the desert. By the time we were over the other side of desert, we become a different African people that can be called sub-Saharan. So those glory days, I mean, the Bible even talks about the days where Egypt will be such a glorious nation that God calls me his people. And I'm saying, when will that be? When will that be, when nations will come to Africa for water? When I say water, for knowledge and for this, when will we ever realize that? I know there's a lot of narrative that, yes, they were oppressed and they did this and that. And in that cry, we often say too much to a point where we are nowhere.
Sure.
But there is a resurgence of African studies. Not to say that Africans are these angelic cultures and people. No, I'm not talking about that. But there's a lot that we've done and we have done that I think we have lost it. And I think this world cannot come to an end until that is realized. I think so. I think if you look at how we have gone through a wave and waves of oppression and apartheid, but still we managed to come forth. People look down upon us, but what's painful is us looking down upon us. When we think that a person in the township, because of the condition, he has almost like a legitimate reason to be a rapist because of the oppression, because of this. Yes, there are social factors, but I think we undermine the indomitable spirit of Africans, that we can rise even in that very confining and oppressive environment, and our humanity blossoms even in that. And some have made it clear that it's a miracle that you've got Africans and blacks in particular coming from these townships. You have to go there to see what is happening. Sometimes I feel as our white brothers, I'm a Christian, so I have to call them my brothers, do not really understand where we are coming from. The person can say, Pastor Papu is our president, but do you know where? Can I take you to where I grew up? Probably if you can go there, you could understand at times why I would say certain things. From a pain, it is a miracle that we are able, but to be able to be sitting like this and talking, it's a miracle. But what I'm saying is, how can we replicate that miracle? How can we make sure that miracle continues? We've got to replicate it. We can't just see this, it's a miracle. How can we replicate it?
Sure.
There are two issues that are confronting us. It's a social change and social service. Sometimes these two compete. We want all the structures to be dismantled so that our people can be free. But that's fine, but we have to remember something, that the person is enslaved. I think Biko comes in now, the mind of the oppressed. If your mind is still in the one that has enslaved you, even when you are free, you'll still be reporting to him because he has your mind. If our freedom is realized when, if I could put it, when the master is gone, then I'm free. Social service for me is the ability to create an environment where we can be free as we struggle for freedom. Brings us back to Biko now, so that we are struggling for freedom from environment of freedom. In other words, we don't allow people to make us human beings, because then they become our gods. We become human beings. Listen, we've had so much discourse on us being dehumanized. Okay, we've been dehumanized. So the dehumanization is something that's happened from outside of us. So for us to be humanized, we need to do away with the agent, do away with that, and then we'll be humanized. Hey, I think we're missing that point, because we need to be able, in the process, in the project, to be able to bring up young people who are yearning for ultimate freedom. are also able to embrace their humanity. Oh, by the way, we know that even those who oppressed, you can go to slavery as much as you go, were just as less human as they tried to make us. Actually, if you look at it, those who were actually less human were those who were treating others as less human. It's like they were envious of their humanity. They wanted to bring them down to where they were. It is a fact. We can argue that point. That if I treat you like a dog, I cannot be but a dog, because how do I know how to treat a person like a dog if I'm not a dog? So people who treat others as animals must themselves have become animals to a point where they want to drag this one who's a human being to the level of being an animal. And so when we start acting and behaving like those who oppressed us, then we're envious. Then we actually reach their level. My view then is we cannot. We've spoken about this at some point that I know what I'm going to say is I'm going to be a little controversial, but let me say it. The cliques thing, and then let's kiss and say goodbye, and then 10,000 sanitary pads. Listen, we appreciate that. I think somebody needs that. But if you look at what the statements, what the advert stood for, and you look at the 10,000 sanitary pads, how do we even make that public? I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, because but how do you make that public as if it atones for? My view then is, if we're going to bridge this, if you, for whatever benefit you've had or privilege, you want to help the incognito, you mustn't be known. For me, if we are going to help our Black young people to realize that they are human beings, they need to see Black faces that are human beings. So that they don't follow the cliques advert that you have to be white to be a human being. We cannot stop a car at the traffic light, and a young Black person runs away from your car, passing your car, passing the other car driven by a Black person, and goes to a white person and asks for money. It's not right. It's not right. Because as the car leaves, that guy, that young man, he has in his mind that one day I'll be like that white person who helped me. If it is true that our young people who are Black are suffering from the effects of being dehumanized, they need to see Black faces that are human, and then they can begin to say, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to be like that. They need to be able to see us doing things so that they can say, one day when I'm a teacher, one day when I have money, I will help those. One day when I have money, because they see you. And I believe that we can work with our white brothers, but they must disappear. They must not be in the forefront, because their past has compromised them. I can take whatever they have, and then those that are being helped must see the face so that they can be able to say, I want to be like that. I want to be like that. I've raised this argument, and I'm going to raise it again. That we could worry about the color of Jesus, which is fine. We could talk about that. But I think the color of Jesus is the color of the person that helps me from a point of a source of love. That is the color of Jesus. So that young man says, if he hears me talking about Jesus and he saw me helping him, says he must be the brother of Jesus. He must be related to Jesus. Now Jesus must look like him. So I'm saying we can represent even and we have failed there. I must accept, as a church, we have failed. We have literally, and we need to accept that. I think we have also run with the social service and not look at the structure. The Bible addresses the oppressor and the rich people for what they're doing, and it says, don't. It doesn't just say, help those who are poor. In the meantime, let the oppressor pay their help. He addresses the oppressors to stop doing that. Stop doing that. So it addresses social change and the structures. This whole thing. God is angry at that. But then he says, don't neglect. In the process, let's also, because by the time the oppressor is not there, even the oppressor will be gone, because you'd have died in the process. So I think as a church, we struggle with social service and social change. We need to find a way of putting this together. I think if sometimes we can be naughty, we can actually find meaning in helping others, so that they should always be needing our help. You know those friends. You know those friends who will never tell you when there's a job, but they'll give you money at the end of the month. They don't want you to be employed, because once you get employed, they will not have meaning, because they get their meaning from helping you. So as a church, we need to help, or as organizations, social organizations, we need to help so that we become dispensable. We need to help so that we get away.
We are not needed. So that we are not needed.
Yeah, we must help to a point where we are not needed. We don't want to be, if they're hungry now, disappear. What are we going to do?
So
let's keep feeding them. No, we must say they mustn't be hungry people. So let's help them so that we don't have to go there again. So that would speak to social change. It will speak also to the quality of the service we bring to them. That's what I have in mind, and where I think it's something that we need to drive to. And here we've got people, we've got political parties that are there, we've got social organizations that are there, we've got churches, we've got groups of people and cultural groups. And everybody's doing the best that they can. And it's just that at times, some of the things we do are making the situation worse, in my view.
Look, I was going to ask you, but I think you've touched on this. Because of and of course, this is also based on lack of knowledge, but it is also partly true because of the relation of colonization and Christianization of most of Africa. Now that we're speaking decolonization, what do you think should be the attitude towards the Christianity and towards Christianity, by us as Africans? And because the thinking is this: hey, these things work together. So if we are getting rid of this one, why should we keep this one?
Yeah, and it makes sense logically. It connects. Yeah, I mean, it connects. It like you brought this, you came, and this happened. And sometimes there was a serious working together between the settlers and the missionaries, between the colonizers and the missionaries. Missionaries would open the way and they would come. Not in all cases, of course, but one of our challenges in all the aspirations we have, what is the ideal? Where do we want? Where will we know that we've arrived? How will we know? What is the truth that we're all striving for? For example, if you say to me, blacks are dehumanized, that's why they rape. And then I say, so what must we do? And then you say they must stop raping, but how do we help them to stop doing that? Then you say we need to dismantle this structure, but how long is it going to take? Because while we are doing that and it's taking time, they'll continue raping. So what must we do? No, they must love. How are they going to do it? What program do we have to help them love? What's the standard? How do you know now they're there? This is where the Bible comes in for me. The Bible gives us the standard, and it says you are created by God in his image. That's the reason why oppressing life becomes sacred, and oppressing another human being becomes sin, evil. It is because that human being is defined by his relationship to God. He's a creature created in the image of God. If we do not accept that, we have no reasons to actually argue and say what you are doing is wrong. It's wrong because I don't like it, but why? Sure. If you don't like it, why is it wrong? Sure. So the Bible positions this and says, because I created him. Do you know, my friend, that I'm beginning to understand. I've always understood, but clearer now, that the reason God of the Bible is angry to a point where he says, I'm going to send people and burn them in hell. I know that sounds negative. It is because those people have actually oppressed his people. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. That's the only reason why God says, I'm going to punish you. It is not because of what we've done to him as a person. There's nothing we can do to God. Absolutely nothing. We can never harm God. We can never touch God in any way. So whenever God is angry, at any point in the Bible, it is because there's a human face that has been affected. God gets angry because the human face has been affected. In other religions, some gods get angry because of what we have done to them in person. I'm going to get even because you have done this. You have insulted me. But there's no way you can, the only way you can insult God, the only way you can insult God, the only thing that moves God and makes him to be wrathful. You go and read your Old Testament. He says, I even hate your Sabbath. I hate your worship. I hate your offerings because of what you are doing to the poor, the fatherless, the widows. He says, I don't want all of these things. Now, we thought that the best way to worship God is to go there and pray. God says, no. The reason you pray to me is so that you can always respect your brother. The praying to me is to make sure that your brother never becomes a prey. That's why I say pray to me. You don't pray to me to entertain me. God is not entertained by our prayers. When we pray to God, he opens us up for our brothers. That is why it is a fake religion that drives me to God, but away from my wife and my children and my community. I mean, there in Paul says, when you elect a leader, let it be a leader that is well spoken of in the community. Because God wants a church that is going to go to the community. Do you know, it may surprise some to realize that every time when God allowed and took Israel, his own people, to captivity, you don't know what that thing meant. It meant family scattered. Do you know why you did that? You go and read. Go and read Isaiah. Go and read Jeremiah. Because of what they did to the poor. He says, I'm going to take you away. There were two sins that God had a problem with. Two. It was idolatry. And then it was the way we treat each other. That's all. The Bible revolves around that. Idolatry means now you've got another God, and this God gives you the power to ill-treat your brother. I hate idolatry because it makes you to dehumanize others. It makes you to look down upon others. I hate idolatry. That's why I don't want other gods. Because what other gods do, they make you to
your own children. Remember that?
So you throw your own children in the fire to please your God. And so God says, no, I don't want that. Listen, we may fight and not agree with certain things. One of the reasons why I still think that the revolution, whatever you want to call it, will never be complete until we really look at the Bible. The Bible is more radical than some of our strategies.
Sure.
I promise you, it is more. It's just that we haven't given it a chance. It is more radical than some of the things that it actually needs superpower. And then the whole idea of Christ coming to die for us on the cross, it is basically so that we can be able to live for others. Can you believe it? That the whole thing, economy, is so that you can stay with your wife and your kids and your community.
Wow. Okay. I see. Bongi saying, oh man, but okay. Let's wrap this up. Whew. I don't know where the time. Do you know this is the longest session I've had, but it seems like the shortest. Let's wrap it up. We don't want to finish people's data now. All right. Let's. Okay, thank you for that. A quick one, Murut. The last fives now, as we are closing this. I just had to catch my emotional balancing for a moment. Then, the last five. What are you currently reading? And any of your favorite books?
I wish I could boast and say I'm reading this book and it's a powerful book. What I've realized is that I need to read my Bible. I'm actually reading the book of Isaiah. I'm reading from a different perspective, not as a scholar, just to hear what God is trying to get across. I'm reading those oracles against Egypt. And then at one stage is angry at Egypt, and then he says Egypt will be redeemed, and is Egypt my people? And then it's amazing. So I'm actually now reading Isaiah. But the book that I read that sticks in my mind is one by Nedley. It's The Art of Thinking, which to a great extent liberated me. Listen, this is how I judge a book to be good. It is when it helps me understand my Bible better.
Even if it's not necessarily a religious book.
It may not be a religious book. Every truth is God's truth. Doesn't matter where it is. And when I read it, I said, now I understand what that text means. I mean, the text that says, don't envy your oppressor. Then I read a book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And I read chapter 1 or whatever. And then I hear him talk about the oppressor and the oppressed. And I said, that's what it means. Don't envy the oppressor. It may even be coming from an enemy, one who says is an enemy of God. But the truth that you hear, so I said this book is good because this book actually has helped me to understand something that the Bible has been trying to get across. So God uses all this so that we can fully grasp the truth. So that will be the art of thinking. Basically says that our actions and our behavior emanates from our thinking. If you're going to help a nation, help them to know how to think. Help them do the right thinking. Sometimes we encourage wrong thinking. This thinking of picturing yourself as a victim is crooked thinking. It will lead to crooked action and crooked behavior. We've got to be able to let people think and know that as human beings created in the image of God, there is nothing outside. You may not always be able to control your outside, external, but you've got complete control of what is within. And that is something we need to inculcate and encourage. And then you express that freedom. It has to come from within and then goes out. I know it sounds too ethereal or spiritual, but crooked thinking basically makes you a victim and you die because of your thinking. The reason why some people are in hospital attending to psychologists and psychiatrists, if you listen to the story, they'll tell you, because so-and-so is against me, because they don't want me, because they do this, because they do that. He's nowhere in the picture. He's a victim. So he moves from prosaic, from this pill to that pill. But if you can sit down and say, but how do I allow them to do that to me? How do I allow them to do that to you? And begin to own your own thinking. It makes a big difference. And what the Bible then says is God gives us the power to be able to do that. As a man thinketh, so is he. And so it gives us the ability to be able to transcend and look at your thinking and reflect on your thinking and think about your thinking. I call it emotional intelligence now, but it has always been there. Think about your thinking and see where it's going, is taking you, and you'll be surprised how far you can go. So that's the book that is. But the Bible I still think is one of the underrated books in the world.
Okay, and yet the funny thing about the Bible is that it is the best selling and yet the least read.
Yeah.
It's like we find it in our shelves.
It's fine. In the Middle Ages, you were not allowed to read the Bible. It was chained there, written in a language that the masses could not understand, because the idea was never read the Bible. Now with the printing press and the Bible in so many translations and languages, it's everywhere. Now we don't read it. There's something about the Bible that makes people not to read it, because whoever is against the Bible knows what will happen when they read it.
All right, and then Muruti, your favorite African destination?
Rwanda.
Rwanda.
Kigali.
I don't want to start those conversations about Rwanda and your experiences there.
No, it's Rwanda.
I understand.
They say the neatest. you see, there are people who feel like their civil rights and whatever, human rights. There's no perfect government, but on the overall, I think they've got it. They've got it. We can learn a lot from exactly the same number of years, moving from genocide, moving from apartheid.
Sure.
But they've left us behind. They've left us behind. In the parliament, they've got more women than we do. We talk about representation. It's big. The young, the youthfulness. It's amazing. The clean, neat crime. It's the unity that exists. I was asking one of our guys, and I said, "So are you a Hutu or a Tutsi?" And he looked at me like, "We never asked that question here in Rwanda." Rwandan. I mean, I felt embarrassed. No, don't let me go with Rwanda.
Sure.
I could
Sure. I mean, I know how much you love the place. And
Congo, beautiful place, but very exploited. That's another story for another time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And your favorite meal?
Sure.
And how does it fit in? I thought we were two things I would have wanted us to touch on, but maybe you can. Health, consciousness, and love, and life, and love for life. I don't know how many comrades you've run, and cycling tours you've done, and I do know that you. The last time we spoke, you would like to do at least one triathlon and the Ironman, and I guess that is still coming. But what's the philosophy behind that? Why put your body through all of that?
Let's cut it short because of the time. I've got two boys. My oldest boy is at the age I was when I lost my father. That was the age difference between me and my father. But I could never run with my father. I could never walk with my father. I could never do this. So I said I need to be healthy so that I could not only run with my son, I could run also with my grandchildren. I'll be there to share life with them. I love them so much that I need to keep myself healthy. I love people so much that if I'm going to prolong my service to them, I need to be there the next 30 years. That's the long and short.
Sure. Ooh. All right. Sure. You've mentioned that. And favorite album, favorite song, favorite singer?
I'll have to ask my wife to help me remember which one I like. Let me think now. I don't know, but it will come.
and then I know this can be seasonal, but your favorite quote that just captures you, your favorite quote or even mantra you live by?
My latest one has been, "Don't envy the oppressor," Proverbs 3:31. That has just been ringing in my mind. But there's one on leadership that says we lead from our peaceful hearts. That's how we lead. What we want to see out there must be something that we've developed in here. That's one of the.
Dr. Papu, thank you. It has been great, almost 2 hours, and happy birthday to you. And thank you I know this is a busy day. You've given us almost 2 hours of your time, and so many things can be said about you: an athlete, a runner, a cyclist, a preacher. We have not even spoken about that. 2 doctorates, and but let me tell you this, not just as a friend, but as somebody that has looked up to you for so many years, that has been impacted by your life. Not just what you say behind the pulpit, that has been great. That has really made me to grow. But some of the most treasured moments I have with you are the conversations that we would have when we take those long drives, when we are sitting. And basically this 1.5 hours now has been that conversation only in the presence of other people. And that has really impacted me. And so many things I could say to describe you. But the one thing, I've said this to you, I think I even said it earlier today.
Maybe we don't want to go to those.
Maybe we don't want to go. But you are a good man. And this world is a better place because you are here. And so many of us have been impacted by your life, by your ministry. May God bless you. May God bless your family. May God bless your wife. May God bless those 2 sons. And I just cannot wait to share and change Africa with you. And all the best in Fundisi. Enjoy. And so many people are saying, thank you, Pastor Papu. You are excellence personified. There's just no way I can keep up with all of this. But thank you for this. May God bless you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me in your show. Thank you. God bless.
Now you've made this show even more famous now. Thank you.
Well, I think I owe it to you that I've become famous now because of your show. Thank you. God bless.